Why do you keep fixing problems you didn't create? Well, if you're more worried about their future than they are, or more organized about their life than they are, or maybe you're more concerned about their consequences than they are, and even more motivated to fix the problem than they are, it might not be just helping anymore. You may have become the engine for their life, and that is going to exhaust you. And even worse than that, and this is the part most people don't see coming, is that it will also make them resent you. Even though you're the one preventing the crisis, somehow you become the bad guy. If that feels painfully familiar, this video is for you, because today we're talking about overfunctioning, why you keep fixing problems you didn't create, and why probably it made sense at first, but eventually creates resentment on both sides. And we're going to talk about how to start handing the responsibility back to that person without abandoning them. Now, when you hear people say the word overfunctioning, they often think it means I'm doing everything because I'm afraid things will fall apart. And yeah, that's part of it. But it's not the only reason people overfunction. Sometimes you do everything because you feel guilty if you don't. Sometimes you do everything because you've just always done it. Sometimes you do everything because asking for help can feel harder than doing it yourself. And sometimes you do everything because you feel resentful that you even have to ask. Because for a lot of people, the thought isn't just, what if everything falls apart? The thought is, why do I even have to ask another adult to do what they're supposed to do? Why do I have to ask them to notice what needs to be done? Why do I have to ask them to take care of their own responsibilities? And why do I have to ask them to do the thing they already know needs doing? By the time you get to that point, you may not even ask, you just do it, but you do it with resentment, and that resentment will eventually leak out. Even if you don't say it directly, it comes out in your tone, your facial expression, your silence, your irritation, your exhaustion, your body language, and now the other person feels criticized, even if all you did was handle things. And that is possibly the most frustrating part of this whole thing. You're doing the work, but they feel judged by the fact that you're doing it, and you feel angry because they let you. Now, before we go any further, I want to say this. You became this way because something in your life trained you to be the responsible one. Maybe it was a real crisis. Maybe it was addiction. Maybe it was emotional immaturity. Maybe it was a partner who wouldn't follow through. Maybe it was an adult child who kept making dangerous choices. And maybe it was growing up in a family where you learned to keep the peace, where you were being praised for being strong, helpful, mature, low maintenance. Or maybe it was just simply years of being the person who handled things until everyone around you started assuming you would. That is how overfunctioning works. It doesn't always start as control. Most of the time it starts as love. It starts as responsibility. It starts as survival. It starts as someone has to handle this. And because you're capable, you handled it. And because you handled it once, people let you handle it again and again and again, until eventually what started as helping becomes your role. You become the one who remembers, the one who plans, the one who notices, the one who tracks, the one who reminds, the one who cleans up, the one who absorbs the stress, the one who keeps things from falling apart. And then one day, you look around and you think, wait a minute, how did their life become my job? That is the overfunctioning trap. And it's not always obvious when you're in it, because in the moment it feels practical. It can feel loving or necessary, or sometimes it just can feel easier. But sometimes asking another person to step up feels like a whole job by itself. You have to bring it up. They may get defensive. They may say you're nagging. They might say they were going to do it. They may make you feel guilty. They may do it badly. They may forget. It could turn into a huge fight. And now you're thinking, you know what? Is it just easier if I do it myself? But easier in the moment doesn't always mean healthier in the long run, because every time you just do it yourself, the pattern gets stronger. You become more responsible, they become less responsible. You become more resentful, they become more passive. And eventually, both people feel wronged. You feel wronged because you're carrying too much of the load. And they feel wrong because they feel managed, criticized, or maybe even parented. So let's define the difference. Support helps someone carry their own responsibility, and overfunctioning carries it for them. Support says, I care about you and I'll help you think through your options. Overfunctioning says, I made the plan, scheduled the appointment, reminded you 3 times, checked to see if you went, and then got angry when you didn't follow through. Support says, I'm here with you. Overfunctioning says, I'm going to manage this for you. Support says, I believe you're capable of facing your own life. Overfunctioning says, I don't trust you to handle your own life, so I'm going to handle it for you. Because sometimes that mistrust is earned. Sometimes they've shown you over and over again that they're not handling things well. So this is not a simple issue. This is not one of those cute little internet posts saying, just stop doing everything for other people. Because when addiction, irresponsibility, avoidance, or emotional immaturity is involved, their choices affect you. Their consequences may land on your children, your finances, your home, your emotional stability, your safety, your future. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you to casually step back like nothing's at stake. Sometimes something probably is at stake, but I do want to help you see what happens when you become the person carrying all the urgency. Because when you're the only one carrying the urgency, you become exhausted and they become passive or defensive or resentful, or usually all three. Let's take a look at how this happened. At first, you notice a problem. Maybe they're drinking too much. Maybe they're avoiding their bills. Maybe they're not following through, or maybe they're not taking care of their own health, or they're making promises but doing nothing. So you step in. You say, hey, don't forget about this. I went ahead and looked up some options. I made an appointment. I've covered that payment. I told your boss you were sick, or I cleaned up the mess before anyone saw it. First, it feels helpful. It may even work temporarily. The crisis gets avoided, the bill gets paid, the appointment gets scheduled, the fight gets smoothed over. The kids don't have to see it, the family doesn't have to know, and your brain says, see, it worked. Good thing I stepped in. Of course, there's a problem. The short-term reward teaches you to keep doing it. You prevent the crisis so your anxiety goes way down. You fix the problem so you feel a little bit more in control. You manage the situation so things don't explode today. But the deeper pattern doesn't change because the other person didn't have to build the muscle of ownership. And the next time that something happens, your brain goes right back to, I better handle this. But for other people, it's guilt-based, as in, if I don't handle it, am I being selfish? If I don't help, am I not being loving? If I let them struggle, am I being mean? If I ask for more, am I being demanding? If I stop carrying this, I'm abandoning them. That guilt is powerful, especially if you've been trained to see your value through usefulness. If people always counted on you, if you were the responsible one growing up, if you were praised for not needing much, if you learned to keep things calm by handling them yourself, then not overfunctioning will feel wrong, even when it's the healthy thing. It can feel selfish, even when it's fair. It can feel like abandonment, even when it's actually responsibility being returned to the right person. And then there's another version, habit. You've done it so long, no one even thinks to question it. You've handled the bills, you've managed the calendar, you've tracked the emotional temperature of the house. You keep up with who needs what, you remember the appointment, you notice the problem first, you bring it up first, you make the plan first. You're already halfway through solving it before the other person has even registered that there is a problem. And then, when someone comes along and says, why don't you just ask for help? It sounds simple, but it doesn't feel simple because asking for help after years of overfunctioning will bring up its own resentment. You're not just asking them to do the dishes. You're asking them to notice that the dishes exist. You're not just asking them to parent. You're asking them to see that parenting needs to happen without you directing every step. You're not just asking them to take care of their recovery. You're asking them to care about their recovery as much as you do. Not just asking for a task. You're asking for shared ownership, and that's why it can feel so loaded. Because deep down, you might be thinking, if I have to ask, it doesn't even count. If I have to remind you, it means you don't care. If I have to explain why this matters, then you're not really with me. I want to be really careful here because sometimes you do need to ask directly. People are not mind readers. Even responsible adults need direct communication sometimes. But there's a difference between asking someone to help with a task and begging someone to become responsible for their own life. That second one will wear you down. And if you've been doing it a long time, your resentment makes sense. And if you've been doing it a long time, of course you're going to feel resentful. But resentment by itself doesn't hand that responsibility back. It just makes carrying it feel heavier. So now you've got the cycle. How you do too much, you feel resentful, they feel criticized, they pull back, you feel even more alone, so you do even more, and eventually you become the manager, the monitor, the fixer, the emotional cleanup crew, the one who loses sleep, the one who carries the consequences in advance, and they become the person being managed. This is where resentment starts on both sides. Your resentment sounds like, I can't believe I have to do everything. I'm the only adult in the room, and if I don't handle it, it won't happen. And then that turns into they don't appreciate what I do, and I'm exhausted, and I didn't sign up to parent another adult. And all that makes sense because you are carrying too much. Now, if you're relating to any of those thoughts and statements, put a little hand emoji in the comments and tell me which one of those is really talking to you. Their resentment sounds like you're always on me, you treat me like I'm stupid, you think you know everything, you're controlling, you're obsessed, you never let anything go, I can't do anything right with you. And now you've got two people who both feel wronged. You feel wrong because you're doing all the work, and they feel wrong because they feel managed, monitored, corrected, or parented. That is the overfunctioning trap. You are exhausted from carrying their life, and they're resentful that you've become the manager of it. This is why you can be doing 90% of the work and still be seen as the problem. That's the painful irony of this whole thing. You're carrying the load, and somehow you're the bad guy for carrying it. You remind them about the appointment, they say you're nagging. You ask about money, they say you're controlling. You bring up their drinking or using, and they say you're obsessed. You try to prevent another disaster, and they say you're treating them like a child. You make a plan, and they resist it because it wasn't their plan. You clean up the fallout, and they resent feeling indebted to you. And this is where a lot of people get stuck because part of you thinks, fine, I'll just stop doing everything. But then the fear kicks in, or the guilt, or the habit kicks in, or the anger of even having to ask. So you go right back to doing what you've always done. Not because you want to be controlling, but because stepping out of the role feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable, sometimes flat out terrifying. And for a lot of people, this pattern started long before their current relationship. A lot of overfunctioners learned early that love means being useful, being responsible, being the mature one, the peacekeeper, the person who could read the room, the person who stayed ahead of problems. Maybe you grew up with an unpredictable parent. Maybe you had to manage someone else's emotions. Maybe you were praised for being strong, independent, helpful, or low maintenance. Maybe you learned that if you didn't handle things, no one else would. And that chaos can feel dangerous, so you became really good at preventing it. And then later in life, you end up in a relationship with someone who underfunctions, someone who avoids, someone who procrastinates, someone who numbs out, or who gets defensive, or who doesn't carry the same urgency that you carry. And your nervous system already knows the job. You step in, you manage, you fix, you anticipate, you carry, and because you're good at it, people let you. That is the hard truth. When you're competent, responsible, and emotionally attuned, other people start unconsciously handing you more responsibility. It's not always malicious. Sometimes they just adapt to the system. You remember everything, so they stop remembering. You fix everything, so they wait for you to fix it. You panic first, so they don't have to feel the full panic. You carry the consequences, and they don't have to carry the full weight. And then you wonder why they won't step up. But sometimes they don't step up because there's no space for them to feel the weight of what belongs to them. Again, I'm not saying you caused their behavior, and I'm not saying this is your fault. I'm just saying that relationships are systems, and in that system, if one person overfunctions, the other person often underfunctions. The more you carry, the less they may have to pick up. So what do you do with all this? The answer is not abandonment. The answer is not becoming cold. The answer is not saying, good luck with your disaster and walking away from everything that affects you too. The goal is to learn how to support without taking ownership. That's the shift. Support without ownership. Let's make this practical. The first question is, what am I currently carrying that actually belongs to them? Not what affects you, because yes, their choices affect you, but what responsibility actually belongs to them? Their honesty, their recovery, their appointments, their apology, their relationship repair, their follow-through, their health, their job performance, their emotional regulation, their willingness to face reality, their decision to get help. Those things impact you deeply, but they cannot be fully owned by you. You can influence them, you can respond to them, you can protect yourself from the fallout, but you cannot become the owner of them. Now, the second question is, what is keeping me carrying this? Is it fear? Is it guilt? Is it habit? Is it resentment? Is it the belief that you shouldn't have to ask? Is it the belief that if I don't handle it, no one else will? Now, this is an important question because different motivators require different solutions. If fear is driving it, you may need a safety plan or financial protection or clearer limits around what you will and won't participate in. If guilt is driving the overfunctioning issue, you may need to remind yourself that allowing another adult to carry their own responsibility is not cruelty. If it's habit driving the whole thing, then you may need to interrupt the automatic pattern one small piece at a time. And if it's resentment, you may need to stop silently doing the thing while hoping they notice your sacrifice, because that almost never works. Silent sacrifice does not create appreciation. It creates bitterness and confusion because the other person may not even realize how much you're carrying. Or they may realize it, but they've gotten used to it. Or they may feel ashamed about it and respond defensively. Either way, silently carrying more and more is not the same as returning responsibility. Now, the third question I want you to think through is, what is one small responsibility I can hand back this week? Not the biggest, scariest thing. Start with something small and strategic. Maybe you stop reminding them about something they agreed to handle. Maybe you stop making calls they need to make. Maybe you stop researching solutions they've not asked for. Or maybe you start covering for their behavior that they need to own. Maybe you stop explaining reality 10 different ways to someone who heard you the first time. Or you may ask directly instead of silently resenting. Or you say something like, I need you to take ownership of this. Or I'm not going to manage this part anymore. Or I'm willing to support you, but I'm not willing to be the person who tracks this for you. Or you can say, I'm realizing I'm carrying something that needs to belong to you. The goal isn't to create some kind of dramatic power struggle. The goal is just to interrupt the automatic pattern, because overfunctioning happens automatically. They drop something, you pick it up. They get uncomfortable, you soothe it. They avoid, you pursue. They delay, you create urgency. They make a mess, you clean it up. So the first step is simply noticing the handoff. Ask yourself, am I supporting them right now? Or am I taking ownership? Am I helping them carry their responsibility, or am I carrying it for them? Am I responding to a real need, or am I trying to manage my own discomfort? Pay attention to that last question, because sometimes what we call helping is actually discomfort management. We step in because we can't tolerate the uncertainty. We can't tolerate the guilt. We can't tolerate the awkwardness of asking or watching them do it differently, or the possibility that they may not even step up. So we step in and we make ourselves feel safer. Again, there's no shame in that. It makes sense. But if your help is mostly a way to calm your own discomfort, it's probably not actually helping them grow as a person. Now, if addiction is part of your situation, there's an extra layer here, because addiction creates real chaos. It creates broken trust. It creates denial, instability, and situations where the family member feels like, if I don't monitor, manage, and prevent, something terrible will happen. And that's true. Sometimes you do need safety plans. Sometimes you need financial protection. Sometimes you do need very clear limits. Like you need to take action to protect children, the money, housing, or your own well-being. So please don't hear this as just let everything happen. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is that there's a difference between protecting yourself from the consequences of their behavior and taking responsibility for making them change. Protecting yourself is like, I won't ride in the car with you if you've been drinking. Overfunctioning is, I'm going to monitor every sip so I can prevent the drinking. Protection is, I'm separating my finances so your choices don't destroy my stability. Overfunctioning is, I'm going to keep rescuing you financially while begging you to become responsible. Protection says, I'm not going to cover for you when you miss work because you've been drinking. Overfunctioning says, I'll call your boss and make up an excuse because I'm afraid you'll lose your job. Do you hear the difference? One is about what you'll do to protect your side of the street. The other is about managing their side of the street so they don't have to face it. That's the line. Now, this isn't always easy to see, so I made you a checklist just for this video. It's called, Are You Helping or Overfunctioning? It'll help you sort through the difference between healthy support and carrying responsibility that belongs to someone else. You can download it for free. Just click the link that's below this video. Now, the last thing I want to say is this. You can love someone deeply and still refuse to be the engine of their life. You can care about what happens to them and still stop managing every outcome without becoming responsible for their willingness. And you can hand back responsibility without abandoning them. Because people who overfunction often swing between two extremes. Either I carry everything or I'm a terrible person. Either I fix it or I'm abandoning them. Either I prevent the consequence or I don't love them. But those are not the only option. There is a middle ground. You can say, I care about you, I believe this matters, but I can't be more responsible for your life than you are. That's not cruel, it's honest. And sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do, because as long as you carry their responsibility, they don't get the full invitation to carry it themselves. And as long as you're overfunctioning, you don't get to find out what life feels like when you're not constantly managing someone else's chaos. So this week, don't try to change the whole pattern. Just notice one place where you're carrying something that belongs to them. One place where you're creating urgency for someone who's not creating it for themselves. One place where guilt is making you say yes when the honest answer is no. One place where habit is making you pick something up even without thinking. Or where resentment is building because you keep doing something instead of clearly asking or handing it back. And then ask, what would support look like here without me taking it over? That question will change everything. And if this video made you think of someone else who's exhausted from holding everything together, share this video with them because they may need to hear this. Caring does not mean caring at all. And if you want the free checklist about helping versus overfunctioning, it's in the description below. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.